Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. You have reached Venus Unplugged. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt, and what we do here is we talk about all things Venusian, the archetype of relationships, psychic processes, and what we're looking at for the next couple of weeks. It's a little more than a couple of weeks. It's like the next 9 weeks, are the major arcana in the tarot. And this is not necessarily for divination. This is more to use as talismans or as focus for your meditation. Because the 22 major arcana, each one represents a different psychic process towards individuation. And each card is encoded with centuries of esoteric information. So today we are going to be looking at the Chariot. Now, if you need the strength or you need to focus on something, what does this look like when you want to move ahead? So you would meditate on the Chariot and get a sense of that. Now, the interesting thing about the Chariot is it's a young man in a chariot driven by horses, but there are no reins. So it's like, oh, that's interesting, right? And so the Chariot, it's a symbol for carrying the power of the psyche. And the psyche, it's not an object, and it's not a thing. It's a process. So when one is in the chariot, seated in the chariot, it's life itself. And I'm sure, but now we all realize very few of us have any really true control. We're all being run by Venus and unconscious forces, right? And in this chariot, this is part of that image too, that something is moving us towards our destiny. Even if you don't know consciously what that destiny is, because destiny isn't necessarily a job or a position in the world, it's a way of being. How does your soul want to be in this world? If you, let's say, want to be a kind person, that appeals to you, and you know intuitively the power of kindness, because it moves people. A person who's kind by nature is willing to sacrifice. They're willing to give up something that they have, okay, for another. With often no recognition, because many, many kind things happen during the day, and we don't even notice, because I think it's too painful to feel the love behind that kindness. So sometimes kindness is met with envy. Oh, they're just trying to be nice. No, they're not. They are nice. That's not even nice. They're holy. They've got something really powerful. They're operating from a very position of magic and power, because it has such a force. Or somebody who's very rarely had kind things happen, when you touch them with kindness, they want to just collapse. They're so hungry for it. And there are times when you withhold kindness because it will give the other person the impression that their bad behavior is acceptable. So kindness isn't weak. It's a gift that we give or not give. But it takes the capacity and the willingness to sacrifice without thought of return. It's just beautiful. So the person, the giver, okay, is going to lose something, but they don't mind losing, because that's part of who they truly are, all right? So with the Chariot, sometimes the Chariot can represent negative past influences that are affecting the present. So we have patterns, we have beliefs, and very often we don't question until some great disaster occurs, then we question everything. So it's a good card to be looking at when you say, okay, I got to review this act. Where did I get that thought? Where did I get that memory? How is this operating? How is it influencing in my life? One is wounded and has to always be protected. Maybe that was 30 years ago. Hopefully you've learned a little bit since then, and you don't need that protection in such a way. It's blocking you. What once healed us can then begin to harm us. So when we start to take responsibility, all right, for who we truly are, and we take time out to clear things out, to see things clearly, to begin with new energy, taking responsibility for your present conditions. And taking responsibility means you're responding to. It's like, I'm co-creator in this, and I'm taking my dog out of this fight. I'm not doing this. It's a radical act of self-love. Say, I am going, no matter what another is doing. We're all shadow projection, and that's what the whole Jungian work is all about. For anybody who can at least attempt to withdraw projections is making a huge step towards world peace. And that doesn't mean they go into self-blame. They say, well, I'm co-creator in this, and I'm not going to tell this story again and again inside my head and act it. It was like one event. And it could have been absolutely the most devastating event that there is. But within that event, there's also a lot of other interpretations and possibilities. That's most people who are involved in anything that has to do with consciousness are deeply wounded. It's the wound that got them on the path. It wasn't reading books on positivity. Something happened in their lives that they could not comprehend. And then they cashed in debt for the rest of their lives. And it is a lifetime. It's not a weekend, it's a lifetime. It's a way that one, it has to do with Venus, because Venus always has to do with relatedness. It's the principle of relatedness. So at one point, we just say, I got to tell myself another version of this. And begin to look for the deep meaning within yourself. And so, any standards of action must emerge from within yourself in order to guarantee lasting results. So the chariot represents the capacity to act on the basis of our own deep internal messages. And very often when we work with the chariot, we activate an important message that wants to come into our life. So we pay attention to the internal. Why do I feel a little uncomfortable about that? Or why do I feel this sudden act of love or an anticipation of an event that you will be called into? So when we want to move ahead, and particularly when we're feeling stuck, this is this image of psyche moving us ahead, with or without conscious knowledge. And it is a vehicle for the force of spirit, your essence. Because part of the work of individuation is your spirit, your truth, aligns with your soul, and that then aligns with the body. And then we have a greater sense of wholeness. The same shit still happens. Our response to it is different. We're not avoiding struggle. We're embracing struggle. We know it's the energy of transformation. We know that, like in alchemy, the dark, the negredo, that's where the gold is. It's not in the sweetness and light. That very often is a performance piece. It is in that unknown part. And of course it's terrifying. But it beats living, in a world or a life that's not the true you, because you have been given. You could feel it. If you can feel that there's a part of you far greater than you could ever imagine. It's my belief, working for 30 years with people's souls, you get a lot of exposure, and one of their greatest fears is love. Really giving and receiving love, or being love. It is so powerful and so terrifying. It's not a religious, I can't even say it, religious act. It's a state of being. And sometimes the love is you don't strangle the person. That's compassion. You really want to just haul off and whack them, right? But you decide not to do that. And that's about as much love as you can give that moment. But that's love. And then you also learn to disengage. Get on your chariot and because the chariot is built on a square and it's got the two wheels, and these are little symbols of movement ahead. Sit in your chariot and let the horses, which is a very strong, powerful archetypal energy, bring you. How does destiny happen? How do the things... A lot of it is because the level of how we perceive it. We only can see part of the story. I always have this fantasy, I wish for just a half an hour, that who's ever running, the Department of Destiny would just stop everybody from interfering in other people's lives. I would say for 4 minutes, change the world completely. How many times is destiny on the way and somebody steps in and intercepts the email or the letter, or decides, no, I don't want that person to have that good. Or the other way around, no, I want that person to have the good and not the other. We're constantly interfering. It's human nature. But if there was no interference, and I think part of that interference is because it is your responsibility to have a sense. It's not black and white, but have a sense. No, I want to move into, being the highest and the deepest human being I can be. That's my right. And when humanity is magnificent, it is beyond magnificent. And the opposite is also true. So when we get in our chariot, which is a great thing to do this week because so many things are moving ahead, the heavens are moving ahead, things are getting thrown up in the air. So this is a way you can get to know yourself. And, we classify ourselves according to a type. And part of that's true. But what if you don't have the whole story? The Jungian work is always the tension of the opposites. We pull up the opposite too and see where that's living and where that's hiding. Because once we get that aligned, we have a much clearer, and we're plugged in, really plugged in. When true positivity is happening, there's a calmness. When negative energy is happening, negative does not mean wrong, all right? There's an agitation. So when we put active and passive together, a third thing is going to happen, an insight is going to happen, an aha moment, or, geez, I never saw that. I mean, that's, part of what my blessed gift is, that I get to see and experience other people's souls, what they can't see about themselves. They can't, and they need that help. But once they get that help, and once you get them on their way, and once you get their chariot, revved up and ready to rock, life starts taking them. We have to do a lot to stop life. We really got to be hunkered down in a whole lot of dung. Because life is always moving towards these changes. It can't stop. It's in constant motion. And sitting in your chariot can give you a new receptivity. And we can have a new perspective when we change our field of focus. So how we're looking at life is, where did I get this story from? And why do I keep on telling only this story? What about the other stories or the story I didn't know about? Two people can have the same experience, but the story is completely told from a different. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite stories, of course, myths is Eros and Psyche, but there's a fabulous book. It's called Psyche's Sisters. So it tells the story about Psyche from the sisters' point of view. The envious sisters, well, they have a point of view too. And so we try to read the opposite of things. And you want to know what you believe in? Read something that is so odd to you. Let's say like Psyche's sister, or you go like, okay, no, Psyche, this, and this. This is what I know because this is what I read, this is what I experienced. And then read the opposite and say, I never even really considered that. That puts a different slant on it. Or we're reading something and it's like, no, that's absolutely not true. I can't accept that, blah, blah, blah. Well, one of the biggest things people, especially, people who just want to be good, the hardest thing is for them to accept their shadow. That unconsciously they weren't motivated by the best of instincts. Something was pushing them. That white lie that just changed the situation just a little bit. That omission or commission. The lies we tell ourselves. Somebody asks, how are you? Lovingly. And all you do is say, I'm fine. When, you're in tremendous grief. Now, we don't have to go off explaining all that grief, but it's okay to say, today is challenging. This moment is challenging, but it's my challenge. And I'm in my chariot, and that's going to take me further. So when your new path, which is always inner transformation, will be for the better. Because the second we decide we're going to look at this in a different way, that we're bored, and that the soul is bored with you, because you keep on just telling it from one point of view, everything begins to change. So much of our story are defenses we developed, and had to. But the protection we needed at the age of 4 is not the protection we need at the age of 40. We need to step up and step in and step out. So the chariot is also a fabulous image for a self-examination. And that you want to manifest something. Well, you need to be in a different place to manifest, in a different state of mind. And the chariot's going to get you there. And that you're learning effective uses and the power of words and deeds and symbols. So the tarot, the chariot, is a symbol of manifestation. And the most powerful magic you have is your capacity to grow. Meaning we're going to look at it in a different way. Not someone else's opinion that tells you how you should be good or more loving or better boundaries or whatever it is. It's like, what you come up with something. You test the waters. So this process is difficult, but I don't think it's as difficult as trying to stand still in a world that's constantly whirling. And even if for a period of time you need to move through, the dark night of the soul, so be it. Because there's gold in that. Very often your gifts are in that dark night of the soul because it's against everything you've ever imagined. And it's natural to pull away from pain. But if it hasn't killed you yet, it's not going to. And you're in the pain anyway. You just don't know it. The denial is keeping you from the pain, but the denial is also keeping you from life. So the chariot helps us dissolve our restrictions because it clears the field of consciousness. That's a very alchemical image. In alchemy, you're working with a field of consciousness, and all that is happening in your life is happening in that field. So it kind of looks like a river. And the river could be dammed up and stagnant, or it can be flowing with energy. So that's part of what this is about, is getting this energy to flow. And it can flow through the power of sitting in and upon that chariot. Psyche knows how to do this. You do not know how to do this. And that's what these symbols, which are alive. A symbol is not a sign. A sign says, do not park here. Okay, so that's an instruction. A symbol has a living principles inside, clues. And that's kind of the fun part. And the more we know about a myth and dream and the esoteric and our inner languages, right, then the symbol means so much more. When we can just look at something and go, I don't get it. But if you have some symbolic knowledge, instead of worrying, study for 20 minutes a day. Make it fun to learn one thing a day that you never knew. It could be word, it could be an act, it could be a deed, it can be literature, movies, whatever. It's something you didn't know. And that brings in gold to the old story. Or we see the end or the fifth act of our story of how it could be. That's what the chariot will bring us to. If we just imagine sitting in that chariot and taking off, now there's no reins. So if you just get a feeling of that, it's going to pull you back, but you need to be, in your body, grounded in your body to sit in that chariot. And those horses, which are pure power, they're going to go. Because a horse, in life and certainly symbolically, is our raw instinctual power. And if a horse loves you, it will die running to get you where you need to go because it knows you need that. Talk about sacrifice. Now, we don't want to be killing our horses, and we don't want to be running ourselves to the ground. Get into the chariot. See where it takes you. Dreaming of future goals or states of being. Moving ahead. So the power that the chariot brings, it's on some level we need to be careful of like ego inflation, which is called hubris. That one, none of the gods like. Hubris is we're identified. We think we are it. We are not it. Or you'll see a person get, crazed with power and really think it's them. Guaranteed. That is just the kiss of absolute failure. You don't even have to think about it a second time because life itself will take them down. They cannot be identified. So, as mortals, if we overreach our human bounds, it's not that God is within, it's that I am God. And in a way, that is true, but not the ego identification. Because to really know that you are love, very humbling. If you're getting all puffed up like a balloon, believe me, that's not love. Or if others have to serve you because you're love, well, that's not true either. So the chariot will bring us along the way. Remember, Zeus is in a chariot, and he rides. So there is, the god of wisdom. But got to be careful of the over-identification. Same thing with, the opposite, the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is, it's an action. Is there something we have done that I'm feeling this guilt, or am I just picking up somebody else's opinion of me, or they want you to feel guilt? See, there's a choice there. We can say yes, yay, or nay to it. But shame, when people feel shame, they think they are the shame. There's no separation. That's a very important thing to be able to differentiate those two feelings. When do you feel guilt? And then we have to say, maybe I do have to watch myself there, or maybe I do need to change that, or absolutely not. That's something I was taught to feel bad about. In truth, I don't feel bad about it. It's my truth. So we move it out of guilt. But the shame, that freezes the person completely. They are it. So in this symbol of the chariot, there is this hero or heroine. It's an archetypal figure, which, represents the ego functioning according and aligned with the self, with a capital S. There's so much more to all of us, deeper and broader and greater and humbling. Because love is humbling. Because it's so big and it's so real. And we can turn to it at any given moment. No matter what has happened. You're not that event. You've got the power. You have the authenticity to say, okay, where's the love? I have to find this. I've got to find, and it may be the love of yourself and for yourself to say no, like working with the inner child and telling the little one, sweetheart, no, bad things have happened to you, but you are not bad. That's the difference. So the Queen has told me it's time to get off the program. There's an English woman who tells us we've got 30 seconds. So within that 30 seconds, I'm wishing you that you have an absolute fabulous week, that you ride your chariots, because the chariot is also the thing that gets us home. Swing low, sweet chariot. Home. I think at the center of loneliness is the memory of home. That's why it, in a way, never goes away. It's ever present. But it's like, oh, that's my longing to go home. Can't do it right now. I have to fulfill my destiny. I have an assignment. I have tasks. I don't have work to do. So get on your chariot, move in a new direction, let it take you there, because it is helping you examine your unlived life. That's what is driving you through and to. I never looked at that. I never examined that. I never wondered why. I just accepted it as a truth. But it's somebody else's truth. Is it your truth? Maybe, maybe not. But that's part of what maturity is. That's part of what Venus is. It is this principle of beauty. And we fear beauty. How many times in my life? When I was a designer, certainly as a soul mentor, it was like, oh, no, that's too beautiful. It's like, how could something be too beautiful? They couldn't take the beauty, and they couldn't see themselves in the beauty. They couldn't be the beauty. But by the time I finished with them, believe me, they understood their value, their beauty, and their assignment. And they could slowly accept it. So here's to beauty within and without, getting in your chariot, and letting that take you out of your stuck place. And just go for the ride. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Progressive brings you Flowetry with Flo.
When Flo flows, she flows in the know. Mind ruminates the rates. Shown them all, I heed the call. Seeing the rest, I choose the best. Sometimes it's ours, sometimes it's not. When the fox walks, is it called a fox trot? That's a real question.
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. This is very based on how you buy. This is very based on how you buy. This is very based on how you buy.